What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden. I'm joined today by Michael. The J is for Jurassic Park. Facci. Want to let the people know what we are talking about today.
Oh, yep. The J is for Jurassic because we're talking about a recent trade rumor that came out involving the Pacers and the Toronto Raptors and none other than Pascal Siakam. Alex, what was your initial reaction when you heard Mark Stein talking about the Pacers have been making calls for Siakam?
I was thinking to myself, we've got Jarris Walker, we've got Obi Toppin. Do we really need another power forward? I said, is Obi Toppin going to be involved in this trade to get his, Pascal Siakam? Because there ain't no way I'm trading Jarris Walker, especially after the first two games he's had in Summer League. So, I'm thinking, hey, if you could throw Obi Toppin in this trade with some other pieces to get a guy like Pascal, that makes a lot of sense. But my brain just immediately started thinking, who are we trading away to get Pascal Siakam? But then I took a step back and I thought to myself, this is very interesting because we just did a podcast talking about trades to create a roster spot for this team. And during that conversation on Sunday night, as we closed out, we were like, the Raptors, they can never make a decision on which direction to go. They're going to end up just running it back with this thing. And I was to the point where I'm like, you know what? I hope they do. And I hope that they make the play-in and don't go very far. And then all their guys they were being bullish about and wanting to trade end up just leaving them for nothing like everybody else has left them for nothing. So I don't really feel sorry for the Raptors. I think Masai Ujiri is very tough to do business with. I think he asks way too much for the contracts and the players that he has. Pascal Siakam is an all-NBA kind of guy, but he's got an expiring contract. Who says he wants to come back there? And you guys are already talking about going a different direction. So to me, Facci, this is where I'm just like, okay, if we can get Pascal Siakam and not break the bank, then I'm all for it. But I think you have to make this trade with the right pieces involved. This is not the time to go all in for a guy like this.
It is absolutely not. And we've heard Chris Haynes say that Siakam would really not want to sign an extension with the team that he's traded for. His preference is to stay with the Raptors and sign a contract. I'm sure it is. You can get that fifth year over there. And I really think there's a risk involved here. And just going through the numbers, this year, if a player was going to sign a 4-year max, a 4-year, not even 5, it would have been 4 years, $175.5 million. Next year, with the cap going up, this deal is going to be closer to about 4 years, $190 to $200 million, depending on where it ends up. This is a big deal. Yeah. So you would have potentially a $200 million deal here with Siakam, another $200 million deal plus for Tyrese Halliburton. This is the Pacers to an extent, kind of pushing the chips all the way in, but with Siakam being an expiring, there is major risk in terms of what you give up. Now, if we do a rundown of the Toronto Raptors ever since they traded DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard, which, yes, it did work out, they've now seen guys like Fred VanVleet leave in free agency. They've seen Kyle Lowry leave for not much. And now you're running to that situation where OG and Siakam could hit free agency at the same time, and it's not realistic for the Raptors to sign both of them and run it back with this core. So it seems like Siakam might be the guy they could be more willing to move, but we also know the Atlanta Hawks, and we've heard the Magic, are also serious about Siakam as well.
I mean, Siakam's a really good player, and I think that he would make sense on this team, and I think he would instantly raise the floor and the ceiling of this year's Pacers team if he was brought in. Especially, let's just throw it out there. The Raptors are probably asking for one of the three between Andrew Nembhard, Jarris Walker, and Benedict Mathurin. They're going to want one of those three back in a trade. I think everybody that's listening to this podcast or that's a Pacer fan would probably say, okay, I think I'd be willing to part ways with Andrew Nembhard because we already have Tyrese Halliburton and TJ McConnell as a capable backup point guard for this team. So you would be more than okay, not more than okay, but you'd be okay at least moving off of him more so than the other two because their ceilings maybe be a little bit higher. And then you're talking about other salaries to fill in to make that deal happen. I thought it was interesting today because Zach Lowe had Kevin Pelton on his podcast, and Zach Lowe basically said that he felt like the rumored interest of the Pacers and Pascal Siakam seems a little bit stronger in the reports than what it actually is. And I kind of probably agree with that. I think that the Pacers bringing in Obi Toppin, bringing in Jarris Walker, they're not going to bring in another guy, I don't think, that's going to clog that position up. They've already got Jordan Nwora, who we both think is a very capable player on the outside looking in. And this is another opportunity for them to add a player that's kind of playing that same position that he's at. So now you're just like further pushing him down the line. And I'm not going to say that I'm worried about where Jordan Moore's minutes come from if I get Pascal, but I'm just saying at this point, like the Pacers went from having no power forwards to if they traded for him and didn't give up Jarris or Obi, now there's like a logjam at power forward. And it's like, what is happening here with this Pacers team? But do you think that Pascal could play the threesome? Because we did see it a little bit when they had Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol about 3 or 4 years ago. But I think more so he's been a power forward with this Raptors team. And that's probably where he's played his best basketball.
Yeah, to your point, it has been a couple of years. I think that was, early on for Siakam. Now, when you develop into a two-time All-NBA, two-time All-Star, he's been at power forward. I do think that's his most comfortable position. So bringing him in, paying him a max contract to then play the three, I don't know. I don't think that's what you do. I think you give him the preference at the 4. So it's like, yes, in a positionless basketball era, maybe he could play the 3 a bit, but it would primarily be at the 4. And yeah, it's weird. The Pacers are collecting every 4 they can get right now. But to the players that you mentioned, I don't even want Benedict Matherin's name even coming out of the Toronto Raptors front office mouth. I don't want that. Well, Jarris Walker, I know it's probably like he's the shiny new tool in the box where you're saying, look, we can't just give up Jarris Walker. We love what we've seen so far. Andrew Nembhard, that guy that we all really love. He's a fan favorite. And I want to keep Andrew Nembhard. But you cannot possibly get a player of Pascal Siakam's magnitude, of caliber, whatever you want to say, without giving up something. And Andrew Nembhard, after the Raptors losing Fred VanVleet, they have a major hole at point guard. And they signed Dennis Schroeder. Does anyone believe in that at all, other than we needed someone to handle the ball? So It just feels like they would be looking for a guard, and Andrew Nembhard is the obvious name that comes to mind initially, in my opinion.
I mean, he's Canadian. He's been really good his first season. Started a lot of games as a 2, really. Showed that he could be a starting point guard at times. I think he had a rookie wall there for a little bit last year, but in Summer League, I think he was the Pacers' best player, most consistent player. I know the first game he had 8 turnovers, but aside from that, everything else that you saw from him, it's just like, yeah, he's way too good for the Summer League. And
way too good.
We talked about it last year. Like I said, Andrew Nembhard could be traded to a team and be a starting point guard. Like that was part of that was one of the things we talked about with the OG Anunoby stuff, because OG Anunoby was a guy that, I'll just say it this way, I think OG Anunoby still fits better for this team than Pascal.
No doubt about it. No doubt.
And if I'm the Pacers, I'm asking about OG still before I make a deal for Pascal. And the report was they want to move off of Pascal because of the age and build around OG and Scotty Barnes. And if you saw the reports also, OG Anunoby has joined CAA. He left Clutch Sports. He also said he wants a bigger role. So is this their way to find a bigger role for him to try to keep him happy while they move? I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on here. I think, like Zach Lowe said, there's too much smoke for there not to be some fire here with this Pascal Siakam trade rumor stuff. I don't think the Pacers have the best package of players that they'd be willing to move off of. I think that the Atlanta Hawks probably have better players that they can move off of, but the Pacers have all their picks, and that's what's one thing that's in their favor. They could throw some salaries in there with a bunch of picks and see if that, at least lands with what the Raptors are trying to get back in return for Siakam, because like you said, the guy could leave for nothing in the offseason. So he probably wants to stay there. And there's been a lot of reporting out there from Chris Haynes saying that he will not sign an extension with the team. So if he's unwilling to sign an extension with the Pacers, you kind of have to be a little bit skeptical of making any significant trade for him, because at this point, you're not going to push all your chips in for a guy that's only going to be here for 1 year when your team is not ready to compete for a championship. If this team was on the brink of making it to the Eastern Conference Finals with Pascal Siakam on the team, then yes, I can understand this trade. But for where they're at now, this Pacers team, they're still in the developmental stages. They're still trying to prove themselves. I think they're a couple of years away from really being a playoff contender, Facci. And I don't want to rush the rebuild. I know that we're probably ahead of the rebuild schedule right now, but we still don't want to rush it and push all our chips in too soon, because at this point, we've got a good young squad that I think could really grow together and be more authentic than trying to buy a player and kind of force things a little bit when they're not really needed to be forced.
That's true. Like, I think the front office has been itching to make a big move.
They have.
I think that they've struck out a bit. They've tried the massive offer sheet to DeAndre Ayton, the calling about OG. Maybe they did call about Mikal Bridges at the deadline. Whatever it was, we've heard rumblings. DeAndre Hunter, we've heard so much stuff, and the Pacers haven't been able to pull it off. They have a core now that is young, fits the timeline. The contracts are great, and they enjoy playing with each other and being around each other.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a scenario where if you trade for Pascal Siakam, you might trade a lot of good pieces that could be with this team for years to come for just 1 year. Maybe you're a playoff team. Maybe you're a real tough out in the play-in. That could happen. I think the Pacers probably feel that they have something going on right now that if they got a guy like Siakam in, they could convince him to stay. Obviously, money is going to be what talks in the end, and it would have to be a max contract. But I'm with you. Just where we're at right now, 1 year of Siakam is not where the Raptors were at when they traded for Kawhi, when they were on the cusp and they couldn't get past LeBron, and all of a sudden, LeBron's in the West, and it's like that was the time to make that trade. Where the Pacers are at right now, I do think you could be a play-in team, maybe a playoff team, without this trade. So it's a real tough spot to be in. Half the fan base probably just wants to make a big move just to make a big move, and that's fun for a bit, but we really need to drill into what would be on the table in that move. Alex, what are your thoughts of what would have to be included in a deal for Siakam?
Yeah, so this is where it gets really interesting because I kind of already threw it out there. I think they're going to be asking for one of Nembhard Mathurin or Jarris Walker, and I think the Pacers probably are hesitant to give up any of those three right now. I mean,
agreed.
The fact that those could be three starters for this team, I think the Pacers are saying, look, your back's against the wall, Masai. Pascal could leave you in the offseason if you guys don't want to commit to him, especially if there's some opportunities for him to go elsewhere in free agency. We're not going to give you our young core. We're going to give you some expiring contracts. We'll give you some picks, and they'll probably try to go that route, which I think makes a lot more sense. I think there's some trades that could make sense for the Pacers where they don't give up any of those three. They're still going to give up some valuable players. I just don't know if the Raptors would be willing to take on that type of return. And I think the reason the Pacers have even been put out there as a team that could have interest is because the Hawks are doing the same type of dealing and negotiating with Toronto. They're basically saying, we're not going to give you our star players for, your guy that's kind of your star, your face of your franchise, because he could leave for nothing at the end of this year, and we have to protect ourselves. So I think the picks are probably the most important thing for the Pacers to give up here, the best thing they can give up and they'd be willing to give up. But let me ask you this. If it took Andrew Nembhard to get the deal done, is that something you'd swallow hard on and do?
Here's what I'll say. There is no scenario where Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker are on the table. There can't
for
be.
You.
Yes, that's that. And I would think the same would be for the front office. They are extremely high on those two. They're extremely high on Andrew Nembhard as well. But you can't get a player of that caliber for Daniel Tice, Buddy, and TJ McConnell. Like that, that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. There's got to be picks, and then it comes down to the thing of, hey, if you're going to make this trade, it could be Nembhard, some expiring contracts. You're probably still going to have to throw in that first round pick that's owed to us from either OKC, the Clippers, the Rockets, or the Jazz, and that's the least favorable first you would imagine compared to ours. So I think that situation could end up possibly being better than including 2 first-round picks, but we do know that we know exactly what we're getting out of Andrew Nembhard compared to 2 first-round picks, which could be totally up in the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me ask you this, because I think we both came up with some trade ideas.
We did.
When you know us, we love playing with the trade machine. We just had some great practice from our last episode. So I'm curious, because at this point, it would be silly not to at least look at some potential trade ideas. Let's go back and forth. So give me your first trade idea that you would give to the Raptors here.
So first I want to start with my theory over here is after trading a first round pick for Jakob Poeltl and signing him to a 4-year, $80 million deal, I do not think that Miles Turner is the guy that they want in a return.
Mm-mm.
So you don't want to. They don't want to become the Pacers of a couple years ago. We playing two bigs like and that's not what the dream
Jakob and
is.
Miles together.
Exactly.
What a duo.
That's not the dream for the Raptors. And let's also factor this in. The Raptors do not own their 2024 first round pick. So no picks are coming towards them as they're looking to rebuild. It's probably time for them to get some assets. So I got a couple deals over here. I'm going to start with some of maybe the lower deals.
Just do that one first. Just do
Sure.
your least favorable one first, I guess.
Okay. So in this situation, we got the Pacers send Buddy Hield, Daniel Tice, Jordan Nwora, Aaron Nesmith, and that first round pick that we're owed for Pascal Siakam and Malachi Flynn. We got to take back someone. It's an expiring deal. What do you think of that?
It's not a bad start. I don't think that they would take it. Obviously.
I don't think they will either. That's why I start with it.
Yeah, it's a good starting point because I don't see where Daniel Tice makes a lot of sense for them besides the fact that he's an expiring. You said Buddy Hield as well.
Buddy Hield's in there, Jordan Nwora expiring, but they could have interest.
Aaron Nesmith and no picks involved or the protected 2024.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think that they're like, there's no way we're doing that for Pascal.
Yep, I agree.
So that's a starting point. I will give you my first trade idea that I thought of when I thought of this whole entire thing, like what I would be most willing to give up, or not most willing, what I'd be most comfortable giving up right now, where I wouldn't really like bat an eye on it. So I'm also curious because I think that the trade machine might be a little bit off with Obi Toppin, because I think that based on what Kevin Pelton said today, I could be wrong on this, but he did talk about because the Pacers used cap space to acquire Obi Toppin, he can be included in a trade with somebody else. And that's why I think you've constantly seen like the Ty Washington and Usman Garuba included in like trades. They've been traded like 2 or 3 times, I think now. So I think that is something that could help the Pacers in terms of they just got Obi, but they could trade him. So here's my first trade idea: was Pascal Siakam, Buddy Hield, TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin, and a 2024 first round pick unprotected from the Pacers.
Okay, so Buddy,
TJ,
Obi, TJ, and an unprotected first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for Pascal.
Yeah, I would do the deal. Would they? Look, here's how we look at it. Obi Toppin, they could bring in. Okay, still a young player that you could sign, have a piece of the future. You get it unprotected first. It's appealing. McConnell, you're getting you're getting some point guard depth for this year. I don't know if they do it because I think they're probably thinking, hey, we're not getting any of your like true, top guys. So it's kind of like our, you don't want to call it pocket change, but it's kind of, I think they say, you know what? I don't think so. But at least the pick being unprotected has to be at least somewhat appealing.
Right. Okay. So what's the next trade you got?
So the next trade I got over here is Pacers get Pascal Siakam and Malachi Flynn. For Buddy, Daniel Tice, TJ McConnell.
Oh, man.
And 2 first-round picks. It's the pick that we're owed, and then ours is either top 10 or lottery protected.
All right, so 2 protections on the pick, so you're not giving them any unprotected picks.
Yep. And
you're giving them 3 veteran expiring contracts, basically.
Yeah, basically.
For Pascal.
With McConnell, the partial.
Yeah, the salary makes sense. It matches up.
They
get 2 picks. They get 2 picks for it. Obviously, Pacers fans would do this in a heartbeat. Raptors fans,
2 first-round picks for the Raptors.
They're not good picks. They're not good picks.
They're not good picks, but they don't have one. They're going to lose them. 2 first-round picks is kind of gold in the NBA nowadays. Yeah,
they are, but they're not good picks, which I think is what shuts this deal off. So then I've got another one for you because
this deal that I said is better than that first one. So you could see.
Yes, we're working our way up. Okay, so this is my second trade that I would be willing to do this, even though it would probably be a little bit tougher. Ooh, just Pascal's coming to the Pacers. We're giving up Buddy Hield and TJ McConnell, as well as Aaron Nesmith, Isaiah Jackson, and another unprotected 2024 first-round pick. So instead of Obi, you're giving up Nesmith and Isaiah Jackson. So basically just swap that out from the previous one.
If I'm the Pacers, I definitely do that deal because you're talking about Isaiah, you're already a little bit unsure of. So I think
Yeah.
you could move him. You said, was it Neesmith?
Yeah, Aaron Neesmith. This is a tough one here.
Neesmith, I think would be a player that they would very much enjoy. And then there was Buddy and TJ McConnell. So it's just like, it's then you get that unprotected first. It's a pretty solid deal, I would say. It's definitely not a home run by any
Yeah.
means, but I don't know. They
Mhm.
might be like, let me call you back.
Yeah.
Let me see what Atlanta's offering, because Isaiah Jackson feels like the kind of player they would like.
Yes. And
Like that
Neesmith.
type of, yeah. Like those seem like those type of guys, but they are, you know, role players. I
Hmm.
think Neesmith obviously has more potential than Isaiah Jackson at this point of like a solidified role. I don't think they do it, but I think that they're like, somewhat interesting. Let's see what other people have.
Yeah. So I've got two more trades. How many do you have
Got one
left?
more.
All right, so hit me with your next one. Or
There's what we
I can
got.
go another one, and then you can
Yeah,
go.
you go, you go.
Okay, so this was a tough one for me to put down because I don't necessarily know if I love it for the Pacers,
That's about
but
where I'm at with mine next.
yes. So I will throw this one out there quickly. Buddy Hield, T.J. McConnell, Obi Toppin, and Andrew Nimhard for Pascal Siakam.
No picks, huh?
No picks. I'm not. If you want Andrew Nimhard, you get no picks.
I think that they probably would strongly consider that deal, because I do think that Obi and Nemhard can very much be a part of their core, moving forward.
Could be, yeah.
And then McConnell is just a good veteran guy to have over there. As you still, I think he would help out for about a year. They could always move his contract the following year.
Mhm.
So that is very interesting. I think the Raptors, you would imagine they would want to prioritize talent over, maybe one pick or so
Mhm.
that way they can keep it going. The Raptors haven't really been a team to bottom out, by any means. They've tried to be competitive for what feels like the past decade. That's very interesting. That is very
It's
interesting.
it's really tough. I'm trying to keep Jarris and Benedict no matter what. I'm
I,
not putting them in any
no
trade.
matter what,
And Nimhard seems to be like the missing piece to like really push the deal over the
I
top for
think they
them.
want him bad,
I think
bad.
they want him, and I'm hesitant to trade Nimhard. I really am.
I know.
I'm not gonna say my hot take. I don't want to say it, but I'm to the point right now where I feel more confident that Andrew Nimhard's going to reach his ceiling than Benedict Mathurin. I feel like Mathurin, his ceiling is much higher, but I think that at this point, Mathurin has got a lot more work to improve upon. Where I think Nimhard's probably just a little bit more solidified in who he is as a player. So like right now, like I get it. Mathurin was all rookie first team, and he put up some major points, and scoring in this league is hard, especially as a rookie and getting the fouls. But when it comes down to winning basketball, I feel like Nimhard had more of an impact last year, being that defender, being that secondary playmaker, and his offense is only getting better too. So, you know, I'm not trying to say that I want to trade Mathurin over Nimhard, anything like that. I'm just saying I believe in Nimhard that much that I think it's a lot closer for him and Mathurin in terms of like who they are as players and what they can become than the people maybe give him credit for. Because I've heard people say like, who cares if you got to throw Nimhard in the deal, throw him in there, get it done. It's like, well, Nimhard's a good player. You'd think you're underselling him a little bit.
I know, and I don't want to overreact off of two summer league games,
Very
because
fair.
Andrew Nemhard looked really, really good. Especially that last summer league game against the Magic. And Mathurin struggled with the shot. I don't want to have that recency bias over there, but night in, night out what you're getting out of Andrew Nemhard. You
Mhm.
know it. He's gonna play good defense. He can shoot. He can make plays. And I just feel like you can count on that. Mathurin right now, he's got to figure out the shot. He can't only look to hunt for a shot, especially as his team gets better. And what if they were to bring in a guy like Siakam over there? It's like, yeah, you're not going to get the same amount of shots as before, but both players are extremely talented. And obviously, selfishly, I love how Nemhard's on about a $2 million contract for like the next
True.
3 years. So here's my trade. It's Buddy Hield, Daniel Tice, Jalen Smith, Andrew Nemhard, and the pick that were owed for Pascal Siakam.
So you're
Do you
saying
think
the
it
pick
gets
that
the deal done?
is it our pick or the one we got in the trade from the
No, it's the
Nuggets?
one that we got in the trade.
So
Could be the
basically,
could be the 25th overall pick, maybe 20 to 25.
so basically that trade is salary filler I hate to say it like that, but it is what it
Yeah,
is. Salary filler, Nimhard, and a meh pick for Pascal Siakam.
exactly. It could be the 22nd overall pick, maybe.
That's tough. Once again, I think the Pacers probably value Nimhard very, very much. So I think that the Raptors really want him too. I could see them convincing themselves that Jalen Smith could be a backup big for him,
So could I.
but they already have a lot of backup bigs too.
I know.
So this is a tough one because I'm not trying to poo-poo all your trades, but I just feel like Toronto probably wants more. I think if this is the deal,
I think they do too.
yeah, this is a deal where I think the Raptors are like, yeah, probably not. At least in the trade that I sent, you got two young players that are on their like, because I think Obi Toppin's ceiling's higher than Jalen Smith, and I think Nimhard, you're getting a point guard at least, like you said here, for this trade you're talking about. Tice is not going to be a factor whatsoever.
No.
Buddy Hield is going to be a trade chip for him, expiring contract. I don't think Jalen Smith has near as much value as some of the other guys you've talked about. Even McConnell, I think he's probably got less value than McConnell at this point.
Well,
So
at this point, if we're giving up Nemhard, you can't trade Nemhard and
no, you're
TJ
right.
McConnell.
You're right.
You gotta have a backup point guard.
Yeah, I think they'd want more, and that's why I think my last trade's probably the most interesting one that I've got.
And to your point, I definitely agree. I bet they do want more,
Yeah.
and it depends of how much can the Pacers give for an uncertainty of more than just 1 year. So let's hear what you got.
Okay, so this is a pretty big one. Buddy Hield, Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nimhard, and a 2024 unprotected first for Pascal Siakam and Grady Dick.
Wow, getting Grady Dick over there. That definitely helps because before you said that, I was like, man, that's a lot. You're talking about like Obi, Neesmith, and Nemhard, and you said an unprotected first. It's like those three
I hesitated on the pick. I didn't have it in there first, so you could give or take, but I think if you're going to get back their rookie from this year, you have to throw it in.
You have to. I mean, he was just the 13th overall pick, who, one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in the draft. So that's interesting. I think you could live with giving up that first round pick if you're automatically getting Grady Dick at minimum. But obviously, if you don't re-sign Siakam, then you're like, man, we traded a lot and we just got Grady Dick over here. So that's really tough.
Yeah. So your lineup, I think, if you look at it from this perspective, your lineup would be Tyrese Halliburton, Bruce Brown, Benedict Mather, and Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner. Your bench,
great starting five.
Yeah, your bench is T.J. McConnell, Grady Dick, then
Ben Shepherd,
or Jordan Mora, Jarris Walker, and
Jalen Smith,
Daniel Tice, whoever you have, Isaiah, because we didn't get rid of any of the centers in this trade. So that was the hard part because I'm like, I didn't want to
that is tough to not dump Tice in the trade is definitely tough.
I mean, you definitely could put one of Jalen or Tice in this trade because the Pacers would be eating $8.5 million in this return. So they would actually be saving the Raptors $8.5 million in this trade by doing it. So you could maybe toss one of them in there to make it make more sense, or maybe you throw. I mean, I feel like the trade had to be like that significant because you're basically giving up 3 core bench players. But
you are.
Unless you include Obi as a starter, then you're giving up 2 starters and 2 bench players for 1 starter and 1 other player. So it's a tough one, but I like Pascal Siakam, and I don't want to undersell what he can be to this team because I think he's a really good player. And I was on the radio with Kevin Bowen today, and one of the things that he brought up was like Pascal's got, really good with the ball in his hands, and he likes to have the ball in his hands a lot. And I'm like, yes, but at the same time, I think that was more by necessity with what that Raptors team was. I don't think Fred VanVleet was nearly the playmaker that Tyrese is.
Not at all. Mm-hmm.
So, because Fred VanVleet was more of an off-ball guy, because I think he was a part of that group that won the championship when they had
Kyle
Lowry. So he was a guy that was playing off-ball. I mean, that was just a deep team. Let's just be honest. So I personally think that this is probably the closest, but I still don't love it as a Pacer fan. I feel like it's a lot of money to give up. A lot of assets. I shouldn't say money. A lot of assets to give up, but at least you're getting some long-term flexibility there with getting a guy like Grady Dick, who I think the Pacers really liked.
Yeah,
in the pre-draft process.
Too. I wonder if Grady Dick's the deal breaker for Toronto in that situation where they're definitely thinking, hey, we just drafted this guy. We like what he got. He's going to be here long term. Like, Obi still, the verdict's out on him. Neesmith due some money. So same with Obi. Neesmith and Obi are both due. Obviously, they'll be cheaper than what Siakam would have been by far.
Okay, let me make this simpler then. Take out Grady Dick and Aaron Neesmith. Pascal Siakam for Heel, Toppin, and Nembhard. Do you take the pick out too?
If you take the pick out, I don't think they do it. I think the pick's got to be in there. I think they would do that if the pick's in there.
Yeah, that to me is probably the closest without adding Neesmith and Grady Dick, because at that point you're probably just getting a little too complex with the trade. But I think those conversations have to be had, because if you're putting on Andrew Nembhard, you want to get somebody back young under contract, and I think that's why the Grady Dick stuff makes sense instead of like a Malachi Flynn, which it makes sense salary wise, but you don't want to be taking back Malachi Flynn, who's not going to really get on the court and be productive. Where Grady Dick could be, that 2-3 off the bench that could be really nice for you.
Yeah, I looked at their salaries and I was just like, who expires, and if we're giving up a point guard, that we can get another point guard back. So he was that guy, but. For I know we didn't get into it too much, but guys, part of the reason of why we would want to make a deal for Pascal Siakam is this guy plays very well in transition. He can play fast, real good scorer, really good playmaker. I mean, we saw he averaged about 6 assists this year. Really good rebounder. He averaged about 8 rebounds. I mean, that would have led the Pacers. 3-point percentage has slipped. The talent around him has also dropped off. So I do think that he's had to do a little bit more, but Siakam would immediately help this Pacers team. But man, if you're the Pacers and you make this risky move, you don't get many shots at this. There's not many cracks at this. This is why you save up assets, young players, to make this type of move. And I think we're kind of in agreement that I think it's too soon to make this move. And I do wonder if maybe the Pacers are better off waiting a little bit more time as Toronto gets a little bit more nervous and drops their asking price a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is something you could revisit at the trade deadline if it's still there, and it's not going to cost you nearly as much. So I will just say this, because I came up with 4 or 5 trades, whatever we discussed here, and you came up with 3 or 4 yourself, does not mean I want to do this deal.
I don't. I'm going to be honest. I don't. If he falls in our lap for not that much, great. If we trade Nembhard, man, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. But if it's Nembhard, a first-round pick, maybe there's like some Neesmith in there, and then he walks, we're going to say, you know what? We rushed it. We got impatient, and it was a mistake.
I don't think I could sleep at night, honestly, Facci, if I was a Pacers decision-makers, knowing I gave up Andrew Nembhard for potentially 1-year rental of Pascal Siakam. And I think that's why that might be a deal-breaker. I know that we make fun of Evan Massey a lot because of his reporting, but he did put out a little bit of a tweet tonight while we were recording this one and said that the Pacers are unwilling to include Andrew Nembhard in any trade talks. So where is he that information from? I have no idea.
I have no idea either.
But it does make sense. So at least it's not something like just throwing something on the wall and hoping it sticks. But I do agree that when it comes to Andrew Nembhard, like, I value him a lot. I think the Pacers value him a lot. I think they see a lot of potential in him. I think they want him to be their de facto 6-man kind of guy that can really help Halliburton, because look at what Tyus Jones was so much for Ja Morant. Such a great backup point guard that when Ja missed time, they didn't feel like they really skipped a beat because Tyus Jones was so good. Now we know they traded him to Washington this year. They ended up getting Marcus Smart, who's probably an upgrade at that position. But I think Andrew Nembhard could be the best backup point guard in the NBA at some point. So guy that can finish games too. I think that's the great thing about him is he's so big, 6'5", can play next to Tyrese as well if they need to. And I think that any lineup that you have with him, you're going to be any defensive lineup you need, he's going to be in that lineup. So it's just tough. And I'm not trying to sit here and say that I don't think Pascal is better than Andrew Nembhard. I think he's way better than Andrew Nembhard right now. But I'm looking long-term here for what I'm trying to build. 31-year-old power forward that doesn't fit this timeline. Seems like a lot of assets to give up for a guy that, you could have someone that becomes someone like him, and Jarris Walker is only 19.
And that's part of the thing. Is I would like to hear the perspective from a Raptors fan right now, because they're probably looking at our team and be like, all right, let me get some Mathurin, let me get you got to throw in Jarris Walker, and we'll be like, whoa, slow down. So maybe we are overvaluing Andrew Nemhard, but yes, to your point, we are thinking long term, and it's like this team. It's not going to be next year, and guys, it's probably not even going to be 2 years from now. But if this core can stick together for years to come, like we have the possibility to do something pretty special here. If this group stays together, gets better together, the books stay relatively clean, and we flip our assets in the right deal. A 1 year, potential rental. I just don't think this is it. And I know a lot of people are dying for a move. There's going to be a move that comes around. I think you and I are both thinking this ain't it.
Yeah, I mean, if you could do a trade of like Buddy Hield, TJ McConnell, and maybe Obi Toppin with like 2 or 3 picks involved to get Pascal back, then you're not really giving up a whole lot besides those picks. Then I could kind of see that. But at the same time, 3 picks is a lot to give up. And it really,
when you said 2 or 3, I was like, wait, 2 or 3, what, first? Yeah, I mean, whoa, that's just too much for me.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, some people, like, I can see them talking themselves into, like, yeah, we give up a 2024 and 2026. Well, you can still trade, like, 27, 29, 30, like, those other picks that you have. But at the same time, it does put a little bit of a control on what you can trade out. So you got to be smart with what you're doing. Maybe a pick and a pick swap. I don't know. But if you can get the deal done without giving up any of your main 6 core, I think that slam dunk, you do it and don't even think twice about it. But I think if you're giving up any of your main core guys, it's just too big of a risk for me to make this deal. But other than that, I think Pascal Siakam is a really awesome player. I don't want to downplay how good of a player I think he is, because I feel like maybe we're doing that by this exercise, like not valuing Pascal as much as he probably is valued across the league. But yeah, I just don't think he fits the timeline of what this team's trying to do.
Now, and look, we just dished out the biggest contract in franchise history, Tyrese Halliburton, and I think he's worth every single penny. But if you dish out a max to Pascal Siakam, you got to wonder 4 years from now, when probably the Pacers would be kind of really hitting their prime. I would say, 3 years from now, 3, 4, that Pascal Siakam is going to be turning 35 years old, and you just don't know what you're getting at that point. Paying him over $40 million, I think it ends up being about $47 million at least in that year. Pacers right now don't have a bad contract on the books. So for me, it's just too risky.
All right, Facci. Well, that wraps up this conversation. I know there's been fans that have been, torn on this conversation. A lot of people like Pascal, the fact that he would help this team get better. But like you and me both have pointed out and painted the picture very well, that it's just tough to completely make it all make sense, even though he would be a guy that helps us instantly get better. At the same time, though, you don't want to just become a team that wins one playoff round and then fall out. Like, what's the big prize in that?
That's what it is, though. If you add Pascal Siakam, yes, we are a better team. Are we better than the Boston Celtics? No. We don't know what the 76ers are doing. We're not better than Milwaukee. It's like it really starts to become a thing where it's like, yeah, maybe in the right situation, we could push a team to 7 games in round 1. That's not what it's about. So we got to dream a bit bigger of being the tough out and really start to say, hey, you know what? When the right move comes around, we'll have the assets to make it happen, to get someone to be under contract for multiple years to fit the timeline.
The best Pacer teams have always been built, not bought. Just remember that. And that's how I think they're going to continue to do this, is build it from the ground up like they have. Yes, they traded for Tyrese, but, other than that, they drafted Miles Turner. They drafted Andrew Nemhard, drafted Jarris Walker, Benedict Mather. And so they've added some nice pieces around those guys. Tyrese is the only franchise player that they went out and traded, but when they traded for him, it was very similar to when they traded for like a Jermaine O'Neal, someone really young in their career, and they really flourished here. Not saying that they were the same player or anything like that. I'm just saying, Jermaine was a guy that you felt like was part of the building process, not part of we paid handsomely for him to come here. No. I mean, we gave up Sabonis to get Tyrese, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, he was on a rookie deal. So part of this young core that we can build around. But with that being said, Facci, go ahead and let the people know where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. You can find us on Twitter at SettingThePace3. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at Pacers Talk. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast where you can find all of our video content. Make sure you subscribe, like, leave a comment, whatever you got to do to make sure you're a part of our YouTube channel. We're going to have this episode up there as well as our conversation with Derek Schultz. That'll be out later this week. So, Facci, if you're excited for what the Pacers have done this offseason and can't wait to see how this team grows and builds into a playoff contender, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!
Setting the pace, going to the top. Setting the pace, going to the top. This is your #1 podcast. Sweeping every team. We gon' need a